Hi, my name is Dwana Jones Lynch, and I'm happy to be here today during Women's History Month on behalf of WBEC-West. This month-long event was created as a celebration for women's accomplishments, achievements, and contributions, as well as problems and struggles in business and personal life. WBEC-West recognizes the importance of bringing this and like this to you because we are the premier women's business certification organization. And our goal is to increase economic vitality in the communities we serve, as well as connecting women-owned businesses to corporate communities. I'd like to thank the women who are joining us today on Facebook and Zoom. Your joining us means that due to these unprecedented times, you recognize the importance of programs designed to help you continue being the best that you can be. We're beginning our 4-session Owning Your Strength series with a session called Managing COVID Fatigue for Business Owners. Strength to me is finding and living in peace in all the areas of my life, finding harmony in relationships I choose to foster and abundance in my bank account. Simply finding ways to live in my purpose. Whatever strength means to you, you're looking to increase or discover more of that today. And we thank you for joining and taking a step to do that. If you haven't done so already, make sure you register for upcoming monthly sessions in April, May, and June. The first part of our program will be a roundtable with our sponsors. And although the panelists won't be accepting questions, you can place your comments in the Q&A area. Once the facilitator begins to present, feel free to continue doing that when asked. That said, I'd like to introduce our facilitator, Michelle Cauley. Michelle is a licensed therapist, CEO of Cauley and Associates, a psychotherapy and counseling group practice in Los Angeles, California. Michelle holds a Master's of Social Work from the University of Southern California, State of California Licensed Clinical Service Worker, Board Certified Clinical Trainer of Social Emotional Learning, Certified Cognitive Coaching, Grief and Loss Specialist, member of Glendale Area Mental Health Professionals Association. Michelle's goal is to create a safe and therapeutic environment, allowing her clients to identify and explore emotional blocks and heal past wounds. She uses an interactive therapeutic approach to help her clients develop healthy coping skills and overcome obstacles in their life. I always enjoy and find value in information shared by Michelle, and WBEC-West is pleased to have her kick off this invaluable series today, together with our title sponsor, Kaiser, and co-sponsor, Honda. I bring you Michelle Cauley.
Thank you, Dwana. Thank you, WBEC. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. So what I'd like to do first is, thanks to Kaiser, thanks to Honda, I'd like to begin by introducing our sponsors. I want to start with Ms. Tanya Nixon. Ms. Nixon is the manager of the National Supplier Diversity Impact Spending at Kaiser Permanente, the $80+ billion Oakland, California-based healthcare organization. In her role, Ms. Nixon oversees and advocates for securing a portfolio of contracts worth more than $1 billion. $1 billion with diverse companies in the staffing, professional, and business services and marketing sector. In 2014, she was part of the team that led the organization to become the first healthcare provider in the nation to sit at the prestigious $1 billion roundtable. Ms. Nixon has more than 15 years experience in supplier diversity. Before joining Kaiser, she was a senior supplier diversity consultant for Pacific Gas and an electric company. Known industry-wide for her strong leadership, passionate champion of supplier diversity, and her generosity in helping other large organizations develop and expand their own programs. Ms. Nixon serves as the chair of boards, board members, and executive boards. It's too many to list, really. She's been recognized by her peers for her outstanding achievements, including being the recipient of the 2019 Western Regional Minority Supplier Development Council President's Awards, the 2019 Women's Business Enterprise Council West Community Impact Award, and the 2017 Supplier Diversity Leader of the Year, and the 2016 WRM-CDC Partner of the Year. Ms. Nixon holds a master's degree in organizational development, a bachelor's degree in business management, and she's certified in human resources management. In her spare time, she enjoys reading, champagne tasting, riding that Peloton, and she's learned to live with being ignored by her cat, Santana. Thank you, Ms. Nixon, so much for joining us this morning. I'd like to move on to our co-sponsor, Ms. Samantha Varela. She is the Supplier Diversity Administrator at American Honda Motor Company. She's responsible for developing and fostering inclusive partnerships that reflect the diversity of Honda's associates, partners, and customers. Ms. Varela joined Honda in 2008 and served in a variety of positions. In 2016, Ms. Varela was presented with the opportunity to help launch the American Honda Procurement Inclusion and Diversity Department. Samantha promotes an inclusive approach to Honda's procurement department through advocacy, engagement, and development of diverse suppliers. Samantha is grateful to work alongside so many amazing entrepreneurs, community leaders, and corporate leaders. Thank you so much. Thank you both. So what I'd like to do and get started with our day as we kick off this second portion of Owning Your Strength, I'd like to have just a little bit of a chat with our sponsors here. And I want to pose a couple of questions. Ms. Nixon, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
So we are now, this year's been like no other, and we are now 1 year into this pandemic. Who would have ever thought?
Not me.
Right, me either. So my question to you is, have you learned anything about yourself during this year?
You know, so first, thank you, WBEC-West. Thank you, Michelle, for that great introduction. And I'm so pleased to be here with my friend Samantha to kick this off. So we're going to have a great time here. So thank you. Right. Thank you all. And thank you, Dewana, for getting us started. Yes, we had a few little technical glitches, but hell, yes. You haven't arrived unless you've had to come through some sort of technical glitch or a challenge, right?
That's right. Yes.
You haven't arrived until then. So it's all good. I think for myself, Michelle, I've learned that I'm more resilient than I thought. And I think a lot of us are saying that, but I don't want to minimize it. And you know, I know it sounds like an understatement, but it's been a really big deal for me. I can tell you at the end of last year, and I can tell you the date, December 18th, that I was, you know, really just chomping at the bit to make it to that day, because I was exhausted, and I knew I was going to have two full weeks off, and I couldn't remember the last time that I took 2 weeks off of work. And wow. in my 10 years at Kaiser Permanente, I can assure you that never happened. So I can't even remember. And so I was really in a dark place, and I didn't know how dark it was until I started to feel better. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh yes.
Until I actually started to feel better. And so sort of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, you know, it gave me, you know, the courage and the strength to go on. And so I'm stronger than I thought I was. And more than that, I'm proud of myself. I am
Yes.
proud of the woman that I am now. And, you know, I'm going to stand in that power
Mm-hmm.
for 2021 and beyond, God willing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've said to folks in the past, and well, just in the past few weeks, you know, I feel like I survived 2020, but I'm going to thrive in 2021.
Oh, I love that. I
So
survived
yeah, that's,
2020 and now it's time to thrive. Yes.
yeah.
Oh, it just gave me chill bumps. Thank you. Thank you. But I love how you said I decided to take 2 weeks and I hadn't. And then you realize, well, I started to feel better because once we stop, then we can say, okay, well, now I can feel. And
Yeah.
that's what you gave yourself. That's the gift.
Yep.
Oh, I love that, share. I love that. Thank
Thank you.
Okay, Samantha, I would like to pose the same question to you. So within this, it's been a year, a whole year. Have you learned anything about yourself this past year?
Thank you, everyone, first for having me. I'm honored to be able to, talk about these topics. I think mental health is so important. So thank you, WBEC-West. Thank you, Kaiser. I'm actually going to get a little personal with everyone today. 2020, I was pregnant with my first baby during the pandemic. And 1 month before my maternity leave, I was furloughed from Honda. And I was terrified of the unknown. I had never been furloughed in my life. So what did this mean for me? In addition to that, my husband is a small minority-owned entrepreneur. And what did this mean for him? What did this mean for his business? So automatically, we were just financially worried. What was this? What did this mean? Especially with a new baby on the way. And small business loans were so hard for people to get, and money just kept running out. Fast forward to 13, I gave birth to my baby. She's healthy, 8 pounds, 4 ounces, 21 inches long. It was a birth, but it worked out. And a lot of times not a lot of times, in the past, pre-COVID, you would have a visitor room full of family and friends who are waiting to congratulate the baby. Well, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we're not allowed to have visitors. In fact, we were confined to a very small room with no window for recovery. And we were not allowed to leave that room, not even to walk the halls. So you can imagine, I'm sleep deprived. I had a longer stay than we anticipated because I had some complications. I'm hungry. I'm trying to figure out parenthood. And so that's when my anxiety really started to kick in. Finally we were able to go home, but when I got home, I also couldn't have visitors. I couldn't have family come and help me with the baby. We had to protect ourselves because COVID cases were getting worse by the day, and we didn't have the help that we were hoping for. My husband, being a small business owner himself, he had to work twice as hard and longer because he didn't know when if his clients were going to be able to pay him. So he wasn't there as much as he wanted to be as well. So that meant that I was dealing with more isolation. I was dealing with, we all were dealing with a longer lockdown. And I unfortunately immersed myself in the news, and I'm listening about the death tolls rising and babies who contracted the virus not making it through. And this eventually led to postpartum depression, anxiety.
Yeah. Wow.
On top of that, I had a colicky baby. And for those of you who don't know what colic is, it's the worst for a baby. They're just uncomfortable. Their stomach is in pain. There's nothing you can give them. And so she was just crying for 3 months straight. I felt hopeless. I felt ugly because my body was going through so many different changes. I felt I wasn't a good mother. And so I finally decided, okay, I need to seek help. And it took me a week to call the Kaiser, great mental health department, by the way, mental health line, because I kept fighting with myself. Okay, well, I'll be better tomorrow. I didn't cry today. So, but I knew I wasn't giving my baby 100% of me. I wasn't giving myself 100%. And I had to make that call. And I'm going to tell you, making the call is the hardest part. And the reason I'm sharing this story with everyone today is because people in the audience might not be suffering from postpartum depression, but as a result of the pandemic, there's been a huge increase in depression and anxiety. And maybe somebody's dealing with that, or maybe they know somebody who's dealing with that. And so I encourage you to, listen to yourself. And me, it was to be vulnerable, and it's okay to not be okay, if that makes sense. So sometimes you just need to validate your feelings.
Yes. Wow. That was the entire presentation, Samantha. That was it. I mean, you brought life into this world in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of a world crisis. And all of the concerns that we've had, working, caretaking, trying to take care of ourselves, everything that you've said. And so resiliency is amazing. And as Tanya mentioned, noticing, I can do this and I feel better. And you're saying also, well, even within the difficulties and the challenges, but you were still able to. So yes, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one more question for you both, and it's interesting. You kind of both answered it. It sounds like, but Tanya, what have you discovered that's been your silver lining, that's helped you get through your daily to-dos?
Sure, I'll answer that, Michelle, but I just wanted to comment on Samantha's really quickly. I am, good on you. It's so hard for us. We're so conditioned to just keep it moving, and to not ask for help. And it's okay. It's okay to need help. And so I commend you. I'm proud for you. I'm proud of you. And thank you for sharing that. That was very brave, to share that story. So thank you. I appreciate you. So I want to acknowledge that. I don't want to get all emotional and soppy on Tuesday at 10:30. Jeez Louise. Okay. So silver lining. I would say for me, you named all those things and accomplishments, and it's weird to hear it. I was actually uncomfortable hearing you talk about myself. So how funny is that? So that's some more couch time. I may be calling you, Michelle. But I like to say setting boundaries, right? As far as the silver lining. And just with what Samantha just shared and what you opened with, I'm now coining this time we're in now as Q5 of 2020, because clearly we're still in this. We're still in this pandemic, and we have to be mindful and intentional about protecting our mental and physical health and wealth. I really believe that. And the same intention that we apply to the same intention we apply to our everyday work, I think we need to remember to apply to ourselves personally.
Yes.
I had the opportunity and the pleasure about a week ago. This is my second interaction with this gentleman, and he coined himself a soldier for life. He's a retired General Anderson. And he said to me, Tanya, we are still in battle. We still have to remain diligent. We still have to continue to uphold all of these diversity efforts that we're doing, Samantha, right? We still have to stay engaged, because we are not victorious. We see the news every day. We are not victorious. So we have to stay engaged. But with that said, we have to still take care of ourselves. So something I've personally done is I've made the area and downstairs in my dining area, that's work. because before my whole place was work. So that's work. I do my cell phone and my laptop do not leave that area. So they don't go upstairs. They don't go to the kitchen while I'm cooking. That is my area where I work. And I have to, and the other limitation I placed is that the boundary is that if I'm going to work on the weekend, it's only one day. It's only one day on that weekend, and it's a set period of time. And we have to remain diligent about that, because I slipped up this past week, and I was sharing with, you all know Jamie, she's actually a friend of mine as well. I was sharing with her that I came downstairs, as you guys can see, upstairs, and before I knew it, I had sat down and it was on my email. It was just, and I thought, whoa, no, back away from the computer. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. So we have to remember to take care of ourselves and to guard that and protect that, our mental health. We just do.
Yes.
So thank you all. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for that sharing. I mean, we will say it in theory, we need to set a boundary, and then we don't.
Yep.
And so I love how you designated your work area, and then you slip up. We do, because that's what happens. And then you're like, wait a minute, I got to catch myself. And that's it. And it's not to, beat ourselves up or punish ourselves. It's just to, remind, like, okay, wait, I have this boundary, because you're thriving, 21, you're thriving. And so I love that. And so sharing from someone like you that, as I can say, reading this bio, and I'm in awe, is, she's a badass. Can I say that? And so, but yes, that's great. And that makes it real. It makes it real. So yes. Samantha, what have you discovered that's been your silver lining, or what has helped you get through your daily to-dos and everything, especially, share.
The baby.
Yes.
I have learned about the work-life balance. They always say that a parent's job, when your 9 to 5 ends, then you just go to your other job. It's because then you're responsible for the cooking, taking care of the baby, and getting her in the bath. And so for me, one thing I have to say in all the ugliness of what the pandemic has brought, being able to work from home and not missing out on all the milestones that I thought I would, because I do, and we travel a lot. And just being away from family, that is something that I'm so grateful for, that we've been given the opportunity for. But then also going back to mental health, I learned, okay, well, looking at meditating or every day, even if I don't have the energy or the motivation, taking out my journal and just writing. I mean, it just releases so much stress, anxiety. And then also, I'm all about having a good session. So the shower, where I like to cry, and I feel like that's just the body like getting rid of all that bad energy. And
yes, that's right.
Those are my things that kind of help get through the days. And depression, anxiety is not something that overnight. It's something that you continually have to work at every single day. Some days are better than others, but I have a beautiful baby girl that I get to open up my door and go down the hall to see. And for me, that is truly the silver lining in all the ugliness that 2020 brought to us.
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome.
That is awesome. Yes, I love that you mentioned, look, crying is good. It's a release. You think about it, if we drink a lot of water, we have to go release. And so once we take a lot in, whether it's depression or anxiety or just overwhelm or any of those strong emotions, it's important to release them, not, hold them in,
Right.
get it out. And I promise you'll feel better. And you know, the other part, I love that you said journaling, you know, with all of the clients that I work with, journaling, I think, is the best gift that you can give to yourself. First of all, it's free. It's free. You got to take the time. And so again, that can be a relief too, you know, if there is not the therapist or even your support system, you know, to share it with. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Samantha. Thank Kaiser. Thank Honda. You know, and WBEC for bringing, you know, this event and bringing light to this very important topic this time as we continue to go, and especially for the women business owners that are going through this and trying to manage. So I think what we're going to do is start to move into our presentation, managing COVID fatigue for women business owners. And it looks like we're getting a message. Those on Facebook are also saying thank you to the sponsors. They're saying thank you for sharing your stories. So sharing your stories, you probably don't even know how many people it helps, because that's real, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
No, thank you. Thank you. And I know you're going to have some great programming, Michelle. So I'm excited to see what's next. And so thank you for having me. Thank you, WBEC-West. Thank you, Pamela. And you'll take it away.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's get started. So, managing COVID fatigue for women business owners. As we get started today, what I'd like to do is just take maybe a minute, maybe two, and I want to do some exercises just to release some tension. And so if you guys are able to join me, of course, if you're in a place, in a space, let's just I'll start with a few mini exercises. First thing I want to do is let's do some deep belly breathing, and we're just going to do 2. And you can always do this later, but if you put your hand on your belly and you inhale, so once you inhale, you're going to fill your belly with air. It's going to expand. So just watch me. So once I inhale, I'm going to hold it for maybe 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And then I'm going to release it, you know, very slowly, almost kind of like I'm blowing out birthday candles or blowing, or, you know, cooling soup or something. So I'm going to do that again. I tend to naturally want to close my eyes when I'm doing my breath work. And so let's do 2 of those. The next thing I'd like to do is let's do a couple of neck rolls. So if you're able, and if you don't have any injuries, I want you to roll your neck around 2 times to the right. And I want you to stop and then roll it around 2 times to the left. Slowly. Okay. So now what I'd like for you to do is let's just kind of bob our head down as far as you can, almost kind of like get a little stretch, and then up, down, and then up. Okay, the next one is I want you to do some shoulder squeezes. So I want you to squeeze your shoulders up and then release. Squeeze them again really tight. Release. And then the last thing is we're going to do some shoulder rolls. If you can see me in my in this, and then I want you to roll them forward as well. So those are very quick mini exercises. You can do more, you can do less, but it was just 2 each. But I just kind of wanted to start that as we start to transition, and I hope that that was helpful. So what I am going to do here is share my screen. Okay, so we were able to do our mini exercises. So let's get started. So today, let's look at what we're going to cover. As we mentioned earlier, this year has been like no other. And in fact, we are still in the midst of this pandemic, 1 full year in. So today we're going to look at the impact the pandemic has had on us as women, our mental health, our families, and our businesses. COVID fatigue, the fatigue. Many of us are exhausted on so many levels. So we're going to talk about the fatigue and the stress around all of what has happened this past year. We're also going to look at ways in how to identify, recognize signs and symptoms of stress, and we're going to learn ways to help ourselves. Then we're going to look at those things that we can control, and then we're going to look at some self-care strategies, and then we're going to end with also ways of how we can help those that we love cope. So that's taking care of ourselves and then also trying to help our loved ones. So let's look at our current environment and some of the things that we've been experiencing. As mentioned earlier, we are 1 year into this pandemic. Along with this year, there was social unrest, there was the political climate, there's been lots of weather-related emergencies, and all of this brings about it's been tough, and we've all experienced this. So it's no wonder our stress is increased during this really never before seen time. So here's my question. And if you guys are in a position, if you can just drop it in the chat or the Q&A, I should say, what keeps you up at night? So if you're able to use the Q&A function, that would be awesome. So you think about what keeps you up at night. I know for some people, they say, well, you know, worrying about my business, thinking about my children, trying to homeschool still, generating revenue, taking care of my elderly parents. Those are all things that can keep us up at night. So let's see if we're able to see any of the responses. COVID has impacted women's ability at work, being a caretaker, at home, and maintaining our well-being. Vice President Harris just mentioned about a week ago that 2.5 million women have left the workplace since the pandemic. That's huge. That's a huge number. And I know as women, we've made so many strides. We've gained so much progress in terms of business. And now because of this crisis that's happened, so many women have left the workplace. Many of the women business owners are still having difficulty with, revenue, even despite the PPP and the CARES Act. So that's also been difficult. According to the Chamber of Commerce, I know that they're here in Los Angeles, there's going to be a report that's coming out at the end of the month. And I know that one of the statistics, they're saying that depression and anxiety is up 70%, and more women are experiencing that. And I know that that's something that our sponsors shared this morning. So these are some of the impacts that COVID has had on women and women being business owners. The fatigue, COVID fatigue. As I think about this past year and this pandemic, it has overactivated our stress system, that being ourselves. Our system hasn't had a break. There is the pandemic, and then there is something else. And so this cortisol is just pumping through our bodies at rates we've never had to deal with. And we're not meant to operate like this all the time. So initially when this started, I know for me, I felt stress here at home. There was the adrenaline, like, okay, I have to homeschool, I have to work at home, I have to adjust my work routine, I have to figure out some office space, all of these things, right? We're just trying to figure it out. And then over time, there's, May, and then June, and then there's July. So then the anxiety started to increase. And so once anxiety starts to increase, that starts to cause more uncertainty, right? And so uncertainty is really the energy of anxiety. because we want answers. When is this going to end? How long is this am I going to get sick? All of those questions. And guess what? We don't have the answers. And so the longer that this goes on, there's more depression, there's more isolation. And it's really not just about work or being lonely, but it's just there's so much change in such a little time. And we really just don't know we don't know how to handle, or we don't know how to cope. And so that has also been part of the fatigue is all. And so what happens is we just worry about everything. So when we worry, it's all of these emotions. And right, remember, emotions are just feelings. And so our emotions are all over the place. It's normal to feel shock, be confused, feel anxious, even have fear about, what's going to happen. And even though it's normal to feel these things, it doesn't feel good. I mean, because honestly, who wants to feel this kind of stuff? I know I don't. But the great thing is we don't have to get stuck here. And so what we're going to do is start to look at some tools today to, when we start to feel, these strong emotions, we can look at, okay, what can we do about them? And the thing about it is, I say to people, when we start to feel these strong emotions, allow yourself to feel it, lean into it. It's okay, because when we start to feel it, the first thing is like, I don't want to feel like that. Let me get rid of it, or let me ignore it. And so if you ignore it, what happens is you're putting it kind of, I want to say on the table or in the closet. But if we allow ourselves to feel it, then we can say, okay, so what's going on here? And so that's really about being aware, and then we can do something about it, if all that makes sense. So let's look at some tools to help us overcome this overwhelm that we've been feeling. So some general tips to overcome anxiety, because what happens is those strong emotions end up becoming anxiety, and anxiety is really, there's anxiety that we feel internally, meaning within our body. And then there's anxiety that we feel that manifests itself outside of our body. So for instance, like, oh, I'm getting zits on my skin. That's a outside and external, a physical manifestation. But on the inside, it's like, my heart's starting to palpitate. So let's look at some of the things. In terms of overcoming the anxiety in this pandemic, let's focus on the facts, not the fear. And one of our sponsors shared earlier that, she was watching the news. And so we know that fear sells in the media. So, and if we're reading something, and it's important to focus on the data or the actual fact and not the negativity, because there's always a story with it. And so not the fearful communication. I think it's important to minimize or limit your exposure to the news. Some people can have the TV on and watch the news all day, and they kind of can listen to that ongoing thing. And other people are saying, well, you know what, it causes me stress. And so if it does, and if you know that, limit your exposure, turn it off, watch it a little bit, get what you need, and move on to something else. Remind yourself that supplies have been replenished. So remember, think about when the pandemic started and there was toilet paper. Do you guys remember that? And so you couldn't find toilet paper on shelves for a really long time. And so, but everything was replenished. And I think that everyone had their needs met. I think it's important to continue to practice physical distancing when in public. We are still in the pandemic. Fortunately, vaccines are now being rolled out, but it's I think at this point, I think I read the number, there have been about 30 million, if I'm correct, don't quote me on that, but as of this time. So I think it's still important for us to practice physical distancing when in public and follow your state or city guidelines regarding wearing masks. Also, challenge your thoughts and beliefs. And so remember, that goes back to, if we're watching the news, you know, is that a fact, or is that an opinion? And does that serve me or does it not? So think about, you know, your thoughts and beliefs and what that does to you. The other thing is, be proactive and manage your stress. And so if you're tired, take a break, create a boundary. But this is how we're proactive, as opposed to then something is happening and then we have to react or respond. And the most important thing is reach out for support if you need it. Whether it's your family, your friends, or if it's someone professional like a therapist. But reach out, and that can be one of the hardest things, but it's also very important. So another strategy to managing your anxiety is to face it with a plan. So I know earlier I posed the question, what keeps you up at night? And so I like to call this the pandemic fear, the what if-itis, because our minds start to race with all kind of things, and someone said to me, well, why is it that when I think of something, my mind always goes to worst case scenario? I don't know why that is. Most people do. It's like if you get that phone call in the middle of the night, you're like, who's that? What's wrong? And so our minds just start to do it. So what happens is, especially where we are now, we can start going down that negative rabbit hole, and it just starts to spin. What if this happens? What if that happens? And so all these worst case, what if the pandemic will never end? What if everyone gets sick and die? What if I won't be able to get the vaccine? And so what happens is these fears start to become bigger than the actual situation. So really creating a plan is so important. And so if I think about women and being in business, since I am a business owner, if we think about, well, what about my revenue? Or am I going to continue with my business? Stop. Let's just create a plan, get paper, and just start to write some of the things out. And so if you think about, if you do this for all of your fears, this is how we start to create some action steps. Nope, this won't eliminate the anxiety, but it will help you, it will lower it, and it will help you feel better. And so if the concern is about generating revenue, so it's like, okay, well, let me kind of look at my business. Let me look at how much I'm generating. Let me look at what the expenses are. And then what changes can I make? But that right there is stopping and taking plan, as opposed to just letting it ruminate over and over and over. It's simple, and it's something that we can all do. And so my thought is, if you are able to stop, especially with all those pressing fears, and start to kind of look at a plan and create something, that is going to help you feel calmer. And ideally, you can start to focus on moving away from the anxiety and moving forward in more of a positive way. Another positive strategy is to focus on the silver lining. So no matter how challenging things are, there's always something positive that we can focus on. There's always something. So what I like for you to think about is what good has come out of this pandemic for you? Because I know that there's something good. We all have something good that's come out of this pandemic. So can any of you share that in the Q&A function, or just comment on it if you're able to? I know for me, there's no commuting time. Just thinking about the drive daily, that's been really helpful. Do we have anything in the chat? Any feedback? Also, another great thing that's come out for me is more time with my family. It's usually been where you get up, you go to work, My child goes to school, we get home, it's just kind of the routine, you know, what's for dinner, and you go to bed. And so being able to have more time with my family has been awesome.
Hey, Michelle, it's Pamela. You do have a couple of responses from Facebook.
Okay.
One is spending more time with my family, less drive time, more me time are the top three.
Okay, awesome. Yes, yes. Yeah, the commuting, I mean, you think about, someone said they had about a little over an hour commute each day. I mean, one way. So that's 2 hours each day. So you think about it, that's 10 hours that they've gained back into their week. That's huge. And then if you look at that over a year, I don't know what that equates to, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that. So another way to build a bridge from the anxiety to security is through hope. But you don't want the fearful hope, like, I hope things work out. But it's really about building the bridge with the acronym HOPE, having only positive expectancy. And so just knowing that you expect that things will work out. Sometimes we may not know how, but they will. And another acronym I like to use is STOP, and it's just the word stop. And so this is really great in managing high anxiety in the moment. And I use this with my clients. And so if there is something where, you know, you're kind of revved up and you're feeling anxious about, and then, you know, you're creating situations that are not true because, you know, we don't know, I say stop, take a breath, or take some breaths, observe the sensations. And what I mean by that is stop and take a look at, okay, what's going on here? What is this about? What are the feelings that I'm feeling? Maybe you are even recognizing what has triggered what you're feeling, and then you pause, and then you proceed. Now, this all happens in your head, but it's something that should be practiced, especially as, you know, if you are one that is experiencing really high anxiety, you know, about any situation. So just stop, take some breaths, observe sensations, pause, and then proceed. And then lastly, because of what we worry about is usually out of our control, it's important to bring the focus back to ourselves and what we can control. And so I know that's really easier said than done, but really, there are only certain things that we can control and many things that we cannot control. So let's define stress. Just like those emotional responses that we talked about a little bit earlier, overwhelm is normal, and so is the stress response. And so if we think about, let's define stress, it's the normal and psychological and physical reactions to the demands of life. And so stress really is psychological, mental for us, but then it's also that, you know, our bodies can physically react to it. Feeling overloaded or overwhelmed, and I hear it often, I have too much on my plate, or I can't take this anymore, or I'm just so stressed out. And so that's really what the overwhelm and the overload is. The body's natural defense against danger is either, and it's three: we fight, there's flight, or there's freeze. So I don't know, we all have usually one of these things that we tend to go to. And so if you can recognize that, that's how the body takes care of itself. So if you're, I don't know, if you're hiking and you see a bear, you know, your body is naturally going to fight, you're going to run, or you're going to just freeze, which is, you know, usually shock. And so that's how our body starts to take care of ourselves. Stress can be mild or it can be extreme, depending on whatever your situation is. It all depends. And what might stress me out will be different from what might stress you out as well. And stress is cumulative. So the more stress that we experience, the more stressed we tend to feel. So what happens is, you think about this past year in COVID and all that has happened, the pandemic, the social unrest, the weather, I mean, the political climate. I mean, it's just one thing after another, after another. It really wasn't a break. So, oh, and then of course our personal things as well. And so you think about, over time, our bodies, it's really hard to continue. Our bodies weren't designed to be in this danger mode 24/7, which can lead to negative health consequences. And so it's we call that chronic stress, or we call that toxic stress. And so it's just important, and trying to be mindful of it. Stress is also very individual to the person. So I want to read this quote here by Susan B. Johnson. When stress becomes chronic, it turns into distress, and it creates a hostile environment in your body. So, just know that, that word stress is used so easily. I'm stressed out, or I have so much stress, but really stress is a thing that happens inside of our bodies. And so the most important thing here, and I think my message is really trying to recognize that. And then once we recognize it, what do we do with it? So looking at this slide causes me some stress. I just look at these things: depressed mood, eating habits change, anger, feeling overwhelmed. These are all really common stress signs and symptoms, as we all experience. Can anyone share what are your stress symptoms? If you're able to, in the Q&A, if you're able to. And so I know for me, my stress symptom is, and I can tell when I don't get enough sleep and I continue to push myself, I get really short and snappy and curt. And of course, my husband he'll let me know, he'll tell me. And so just going to sleep, taking a nap, just saying, you know what, I'm done. I got to hang it up and I have to go to sleep. I'm a completely different person. So this list is not exclusive. There are others, like, there's irritability, there are outbursts. So the key here is to really identify your signs, so that you'll know when it's time to stop, the strategy that we talked about earlier, and take a break. Is there anything being shared in the chat? Let me see if I can access it here. Don't see. Okay. So unfortunately, so many of us have been living with stress for so long that we no longer recognize our stress symptoms.
Shout out to Pamela again. You do have a couple of items in from Facebook.
Okay.
And there is overeating, drinking too much wine, not being able to control my emotions.
Yes. Yes. That's very real. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Pamela. And so we're going to talk about overeating in a second, and just eating in general. And of course, in drinking, it's one thing when, first it was kind of, there were the memes that were out and I'm going to have a glass of wine. But over time, when it becomes every day, and now we're a year in, it goes from, maybe having a little bit to, should I be concerned? And so really, it's important that we're able to recognize what our stress symptoms are and pay attention to our body, listen to our bodies, because our bodies talk to us. So let's think about the things that are in our control regarding stress management. Our mindset, Do we have a positive mindset or do we have a negative mindset? We can make that choice. And if it is negative, we can think about, okay, what's going on? So it's really about just trying to change our mindset. Our attitude is everything. And so I've even had my own self-talk where I've had to say, okay, Michelle, you need an attitude check, or you need to check your attitude, you know, and it's just, you know, when I'm feeling it. What else can we control? We can control what we think, what we say, and what we do. Because guess what? We have a choice. That's a choice that we can make. We can control our work ethic. We can control being honest and have integrity. And what I really like is we can control if we offer help, if we want to offer help to someone, but most importantly, we can also control if we receive help. And so some people are really good with wanting to give, which is great, but also it's important to get comfortable with receiving help as well. And we can control the things that I'm talking about today. Are we going to implement these stress management and some of the self-care practices that we're going to talk about? And so they don't just become words, they don't just become a conversation, but it becomes about, yes, I am going to make a choice to just do one thing. That's all, just one.
Michelle?
Yes.
There's another question there that says, you know, how do you handle friends who call with maybe illnesses, or maybe when they call looking for support? And if you're struggling yourself, how do you suggest handling something like that?
How do you deal with that? Yes. You know, if a person picks up the phone and they're reaching out, and maybe you are that one person that they feel comfortable enough with, that's great. However, sometimes, and I've heard it can happen, okay, well, it's happened once, and then it's happened again, and then again. And so then what happens is you're saying, I am not able, I don't have the capacity. That's about having a conversation, because we're all going through this really difficult time. And so that becomes about being honest and having integrity with yourself to say, you know, have you thought about reaching out professionally and getting some help? Or, you know, here is some literature, or here is, you know, there's so much stuff online that could help. But yes, that becomes, I could see how someone reaching out that might be sick or might be stressed or depressed and reaching out to you, and you're saying that you, the person that's receiving that, don't have that capacity. So it's really about a conversation, you know, when I look at it and listen to it. And that is something where creating a boundary, and I think it was mentioned earlier by one of our sponsors, you know, how do I put those things in place? So yes, absolutely. What's out of our control? So we just talked about the things that we can control, our mindset, our attitude. What's out of our control? Other people, our spouses, our children, our bosses, neighbors. So we can't control any of these things. Other people's problems are also out of our control. So if these are the things that's bringing you stress, remember, you can't control it. Sometimes we think we can, and we think we want to be in control. And the more that we're trying to hold on to it, really, we're not controlling anything. It's like, let it go. All of these challenges and situations, the pandemic, we can't control that. The weather, we certainly can't control that. And financial market, we can't control that. And so what happens is it might be a trigger for us and we might be worried about it, but then really it's like, if we need to manage our stress, we have to focus on ourselves. That's the most important thing. One excellent strategy in terms of focusing on ourselves is our health. And I think this is what kind of goes toward the question that we just talked about. So there are 3 steps to managing your stress. The first one is awareness. So we've been talking about stress signs, we've been talking about the emotions, so recognizing what's going on. And sometimes it's really about just being still, just to trying to recognize. When you're able to recognize, listen to your body, because our bodies talk to us. you know, I'm not feeling this, or I'm, you know, and oftentimes, sometimes people will tend to ignore what it is that they're feeling. And so pay attention to your body, your mind, and your spirit. Once you have recognized and you're aware, you know, there's something going on here, I want you to identify, okay, so what's your trigger? Where is that coming from? Is this something that I can control? Is it about me? Is it my attitude? Or is it something that's outside of my control? You know, is it, my spouse or my partner or my child or my boss? Is it, somebody else's problem? So ask yourself that question, and so you think about what's the trigger? And then once you're aware, once you've identified what the trigger is, or if it's in your control or out, then you can think about an action plan. What is it that I need to do to get rid of this, to alleviate this stress? What kind of help or what kind of an action plan do I need to sit? Do I need to, do some writing about it so I can get some clarity? Or do I need to check myself, for lack of better words? Do I need to look at myself and say, okay, Michelle, this is something that's out of your control. So what are you doing? It's taking your energy. So it's really important, listen to the message, monitor your energy, and then, turn your attention to discomfort and pain. Turn your attention away from it. So once you're able to, we looked at those 3 steps. These pillars of life are often where our stress shows up. And this is the most basic, and this is the most simplest thing. And I say this because if we work and focus on this for ourselves, we are better people first of all, for ourselves, but then for our businesses, for our families, for everything else, and we're able to show up. And so often where our stress shows up is eating too much or not eating at all, sleeping enough or, sleeping too much, and then of course not exercising. These things here are your first line of defense. It's also the first thing to go that we don't take care of. So if we focus on these really basic elements of self-care when we're stressed, this is how we start to take care of ourselves. So if we start with food, I know lots of people, I heard the term when the pandemic started, quarantine 15, I put on that 15 pounds. I do too. And so we have to think about, or you sit down with the bag of chips and you're like, did I just eat that whole bag? Or some people they've lost their appetite. I've also have had clients share, Michelle, I've lost 20 pounds, in a month, and I don't know how I did it. And so this is the first part. So a strategy here is, as opposed to, I'm going to get rid of all the food, or I'm going to do this, or, just start with one meal or one snack at a time, just one thing. And so if you can say, okay, well, you know what, I will make sure that I'm going to eat breakfast every morning. And whatever that is for you. And, you ideally you want whole foods, nutrient dense foods. And so what'll happen is if you're able to do that, it's the consistency over time. That's how we start to make the changes in terms of food. Exercise, food is something that we have to eat daily, every day, usually several times throughout the day. Sleep is something that we have to do. Exercise, that's usually something that falls off. But, the key here is, people say, oh, well, I'm too busy to exercise, or I have no energy to exercise. The gyms are closed. I can't do anything. And so there's so many ways. I found some awesome videos on YouTube. I used to do yoga a long time ago. I stopped. Then I, was going through YouTube and I found a couple of apps. So going outside. So there's all types of things, but exercise, find something that you can do. And so if you think about, okay, I'm going to do 10 minutes 3 times a week, And maybe over time it would be, okay, 20 minutes, 5 times a day, 5 times a week, and so on. So, be gentle and kind with yourself. And the other thing is insomnia or sleep. I said insomnia, sleep. So also during this time, there's been a new term that they've retermed insomnia to coronasomnia, and it's been because of this pandemic. I know, for instance, at UCLA, the Sleep Disorders Clinic, they were saying that they had 30% more referrals and people were coming in saying that they're having sleep issues. Well, there are no sleep issues. It's really anxiety, which is insomnia. And so a strategy here is really about developing good bedtime routines, trying to unplug an hour before bed, journaling. I know we talked about that a little bit early, but doing something relaxing, whatever your bedtime routine is. I think about my daughter, and we have a routine with her where she eats dinner, she has her bath, we do some reading, and so if you think about like what a child's routine might be like, think about your adult. How does your adult nighttime routine compare to that of a child? So and some of us we don't have any routines. We don't. And so we should probably create some sleep routines, because you can't cheat sleep. And, I know people will wear it as a badge of honor. Oh, I only slept 2 hours last night, or and that's not anything to brag about. And if you do that one night or 2 nights, but that cannot be sustainable, because what happens is there will be health consequences. It's very unhealthy to not sleep. So focusing on these 3 pillars of health, well, first of all, it'll help your immune system, and it will help you manage your daily stressors of life, all the stuff that we're dealing with. These 3 simple, basic things. I wish I had this magic rule, but that's it. So, self-care strategies for women in business. It's important to find our new way to peace and balance those things in terms of what you can accomplish as a woman, as a professional, as a mom. For you, it's important. I'm sure that we've all had to create shifts during this time. I know as a woman, we're driven to be our best. We want to be our best at home, at work, in our marriage, with our kids. And, that's a lot of pressure. And it's exhausting. And so I know that many of us have had to learn new ways to cope during this time. So I just want to say, cut yourself some slack. This is what I mean when I say extend grace and have some forgiveness. Have some self-compassion. So if you think about, let's say your friend is sick and you want to make a pot of soup and you want to take it over, that's you saying, okay, I care about my friend, I want to help them. Well, we have to do that same thing for ourselves, give it to ourselves, and whatever that looks like. So that's self-compassion, so that we don't belittle our feelings also, in terms of what we're talking about here. Instead of the panic, lean into the vulnerability. Most people don't want to be vulnerable because, I don't want to put myself out there, or, this is stressful. So really, stress is about perspective. Our bodies really, it doesn't know the difference in between cortisol, the good stress or the bad stress. So sometimes when there is something, we can turn that stress into an opportunity. And I also want to say, support the concept of women supporting women. That has always been a concept. And I know that I draw strength from the women in my life, personally and professionally. And so let's continue to do that and support each other. But remember, putting ourselves first is crucial. And the last thing I want to say, if you're struggling, it's okay to ask for help, whether it's personal or professional. And asking for professional help or reaching out to get professional help is huge. That means that, there is a level of depthness to you. And it doesn't mean that you're gonna have to, some people say, well, I don't want to reach out for help because I don't want to go on medication. That does not mean you're going to go on medication. Medication has a purpose, but talk therapy is really to just kind of get out of your head and talk about your challenges, especially if you're struggling. Some other self-care strategies that are so important when you're stressed out. So think about when we're in the airplanes, some of the first information that we get is about the oxygen mask, right? So we put the oxygen mask on ourselves first, and then if so, we will reach over to help our neighbor. And so this is where we have to take care of ourselves so that we can then reach over and take care of our neighbor. So remember, acknowledging your situation. Once you admit it, then you can take action. It's really important to keep things in perspective, be realistic and reasonable with what you can do and what you cannot do. You know, sometimes we want to overcommit. And I know that I've been guilty of that in the past. And so that's one of the things I continue to work on. And then also focus on the 3 pillars of health that we just talked about: food, exercise, and sleep. So here are some stress management tips that I want to talk about, especially as we continue to be in this pandemic and things are changing daily. And for those that are continue to, whether you're working from home or at your office, take frequent breaks throughout the day. And so I know people have said to me, you know, I wake up, I roll over, I get on my laptop and I'm just working all day. And then all of a sudden it's been 12 hours. And so it's important to stretch, make sure you're drinking water, take a walk, whether it's around your house or you're outside. Also set boundaries. It's important to set healthy boundaries and also prioritize your work time, kind of like our sponsor shared earlier, that she created a specific workplace for her. And so that's great. That's a boundary and that's a priority. It's also important to let go of non-essential tasks. And that's really about balance, because remember, this is all something that we've had to learn this past year. And like and practicing an attitude of gratitude, because there is always something that we can be grateful for. And so like that silver lining, what we talked about a little bit earlier, it's a great way to shift that energy from, if you're feeling overwhelmed, to feel overjoyed. And so what's your silver lining? What good has come out of this pandemic, which is what we talked about earlier. I would like to ask if any of the participants are able to share, what are you grateful for? If you're able to do that. And as you do that, I'm gonna continue with one of the fourth tips are, it's important to engage in activities that you enjoy. All work and no play is no good. So I have a really nice bicycle, and I hadn't, my husband called it an antique. And so once the pandemic happened, I got on my bike and I started riding it. And then my daughter learned how to ride her bike, embarrassingly. So, and it's fun. We're outside, it's exercise. And so that's kind of been one of my things. And I'm grateful for that. And then the last thing I want to say is just continue personal hygiene. I know some people are like, oh, I don't get dressed, or I'm at home. And so sometimes that can be the difference in how we feel, and it can have a huge impact on our emotional health. So just getting dressed, doing something different, putting some jewelry on or something can make a big difference. So I know that these are self-care practices that will help you feel better, but it's important to be able to make these happen, put these things in place.
There are a couple of comments that came from our Facebook. Grateful for the ability to be self-aware. I think that's a good one.
Yes.
And grateful for the community and the support the community provides them.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, the support is so important. Yeah, and having that community. And so we've been talking about taking care of ourselves and helping ourselves. So what I want to focus on right now is how can we help our loved ones, our family, our children, or our parents, if you are even elderly members. So it's important to talk openly and honestly with both of them, especially during this pandemic. I know someone said to me, well, people in my family don't talk. and so now that people have been home, maybe this has changed. I don't know, but it is important to at least try to have those conversations. Also acknowledge their concerns. You know, if it's your child or if it's an older family member, acknowledge what they're feeling, you know, because it's nice to be acknowledged. That means I've been heard. Children's concerns are different from our own. And so I would recommend asking your children questions and make sure that you have age appropriate discussions. I know my child was initially concerned about the pandemic and, well, when is it going to end? Well, when can I go back to school? And mommy, I just need to play. And so, you know, their concerns are different from ours. Give them reassurance as well. You know, even if we don't know, you know, we can still try to reassure them as best that we're able. Be calm and be patient. And I know everyone's different with that, but it's important, especially with your loved ones. Help your children to cope and manage their fears, along with you trying to model good coping skills within yourself. I also think it's important to moderate and monitor TV and social media. You know, I know some women have shared with me, oh, I feel so guilty because, you know, YouTube or the computer has been my child's babysitter. You know, this has been a different time. And again, this is not about, you know, to punish ourselves, but just to kind of be aware of it. You know, we've all had to adjust and pivot along the way, you know, as we continue to go through this. Maintain normal schedules and routines as best you can within your home. I know I've had to play with a few different routines. You know, should I work out in the morning? Should it be in the middle of the day? Should it be at night? And, you know, so just those things as I try to take care of myself. So the same thing with your children as well. Kids really do need routines just to have some type of normalcy. Encourage positive activities, games, and play. We started playing Monopoly again here. So, you know, that was fun. And also kids need to have some type of a control. So whether it's their food, what they wear, games, just things like that. And if you have a child that's really anxious or stressed, I would recommend trying mindfulness or even meditation practices. There are so many programs online. I know, I'm sure that you guys have heard about there's Headspace, there's Calm, there's a great app called Inner Explorer for children. It's a meditation app. And so there's lots of those things. And so remember, it's setting that up, and then also, you know, being consistent about it. And I want to leave you with some resources. These are some mental health resources, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, the National Institute of Mental Health, and the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And then there are also some resources in terms of COVID-19, the World Health Organization, Centers for Disease Control, and then Kids Health. And on the Kids Health website, there's lots of information there, a lot of information. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you to WBEC. Thank you to Kaiser. Thank you to Honda Duana, thank you so much. And Pamela, thank you so much for just bringing this event to WeBank and allowing me to, be here and share my knowledge and what I have.
Well, Michelle, we do have one last comment that came from our Facebook group, and it was, it's been such a stressful time in so many ways. They liked the acronym that you shared earlier, HOPE. They stated that they've lost several loved ones and lived through weather issues, lost employment, and so this has been tremendously helpful with finding ways of coping. So I know we had a couple of technical difficulties on the onset, and I hope that Pamela and I could step in and try and help alleviate those for you, Michelle, but we appreciate you being here, and we look forward to the next monthly sessions. Thank you so much for joining today. Michelle, would you like to?
Thank you, and all the comments in terms of Facebook. I hope that this was helpful, and I know the one person that mentioned about loss. I know that one of our presentations moving forward is going to be on grief and loss. So we will talk a little bit more about that as well. And I just hope that something today resonated with you and you're able to I just said, just try one. You don't have to try them all, just try one. So if it's hope, having only positive expectancy, that's where we can work on. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see you next month.
Okay, see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.